So recently, at the moment, I feel like every single day we get a dose of major DCU news that is leading up to something fairly big. I think we all knew that, but today, or rather last night, we got arguably some of the biggest news so far. Now, I was going to talk about the Batman news initially, as yesterday there were reports going around that Gunn and Safran were exploring the possibility of Reeves' universe joining the DC universe, but as I kind of felt like this whole time, that didn't actually go down. But I still want to talk about that, so what I'm going to do is, timestamp this, put it into video chapters, because there's a lot to talk about there in the back half. But obviously, today's biggest story is the major reveal that Henry Cavill is no longer Superman. There is no ifs and buts or doubts about it anymore. He is quite literally not the Superman of Peter Safran and James Gunn's new DC cinematic universe. In fact, we're getting a Superman in his younger years. We're going to get into all kinds of details about that throughout this video. This video, I just want to make it clear, is probably going to go 200% send on the full ramble mode. But again, there is so much for me to talk about. There's so many details that come out of Henry Cavill, James Gunn and what he said, Ben Affleck directing potentially a new DCU movie, the questions in of itself that this even raises about this being a hard reboot or still a soft reboot, maintaining some things. Even though to many of you right now are like, Boba, what? Isn't it so obvious that this is a full reset? I am still kind of not convinced, believe it or not, and we'll get into that with what James Gunn has said himself. So Henry Cavill posted 9 hours ago from making this video, I have just had a meeting with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and it's sad news, everyone. I will, after all, not be returning as Superman. After being told by the studio to announce my return back in October, prior to their hire. This news isn't the easiest, but that's life. The changing of the guard is something that happens. I respect that. James and Peter have a universe to build. I wish them and all involved with the new universe the best of luck and the happiest of fortunes. For those who have been by my side through the years, we can mourn for a bit, but then we must remember, Superman is still around, everything he stands for still exists, and the example he sets for us are still there. My turn to wear the cape has passed, but what Superman stands for never will. It's been a fun ride with you all, onwards and upwards. Now, at the same time, James Gunn put this out on Twitter, and this is what we're going to get into in more details in a few moments and break down exactly what ripple effects this will have. So James Gunn said, Peter and I have a DC slate ready to go, which we couldn't be more over the moon about. We'll be able to share some exciting information about our first projects at the beginning of the new year. So stuff like that. We're going to hear about it already at the beginning of 2023. Among those on the slate is Superman. In the initial stages, our story will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life, so the character will not be played by Henry Cavill. So their direction for Superman, obviously focusing on the initial stages, an earlier part of Superman's life in his early days, obviously can't really be Henry Cavill because they would be casting a slightly younger actor. But this doesn't necessarily mean Smallville level to all those already jumping to that, as further down this thread, somebody said, please tell me this isn't an origin movie. He said, no way. So it's not an origin, but given it's a new DC cinematic universe, it seems that they're still wanting to go a little bit earlier as everything is kind of growing like the roots from a tree into the, don't forget, this is an 8 to 10 year plan. So, that needs to be cultivated. And I guess he wants this Superman character at an earlier point so that growth can come. But again, I'm already getting ahead of myself. Let's finish this off. James Gunn goes on to say, but we just had a great meeting with Henry and we are big fans. And we talked about a number of exciting possibilities to work together in the future. So you have to assume that is a role in the DC universe at some point in time. I don't understand what else a number of exciting possibilities to work together in the future could be about if it wasn't the 8 to 10 year plan in the DC universe. So we need to acknowledge that Henry Cavill could, if he wants to, play some role, a DC character, but this could be 4 years from now, 6 years from now, 8 years from now, 10 years from now. And I wouldn't blame him if he didn't want to come back right away. And obviously, if he even did entertain that idea, I think he would want to play a role that suited him. But yeah, like, I guess they have something in mind for him one day. Now, the thread continues with James Gunn replying to some fans asking questions. So this person said, being part of the slate, I assume it's a movie. He says yes. So this is a Superman movie in the slate of the new DC Universe plans. Again, he's planning for 8 to 10 years, and it's a movie. The next question is, are you writing and directing? Now, this is what's got some people excited or optimistic still, despite this news, and some people like, no. So James Gunn replied, I am writing, and in brackets, and have been for a while. We don't know who is directing yet. So not only have we got a new Superman in his younger years of life, it's not quite an origin, James Gunn is the person writing this movie. This Superman movie will be written by none other than James Gunn. It won't be directed by him as it currently stands, but the script, it is going to have its treatment by James Gunn. Now, it's going to be interesting to get everyone's thoughts about that. Another fan asked, please tell me this isn't an origin movie. He says, no way. So again, just to make that clear, this isn't going to be Smallville. It's not exactly going to be Henry Cavill Superman, who was already kind of out there. It's going to be a Clark in Metropolis, and what we're going to get into as a reporter, I guess still being Superman, having the actual suit, but I guess kind of inexperienced. As, you know, this new whole DC cinematic universe will be arguably an inexperienced one. Who knows? We still have so much up in the air, and this is a big part of this video in the discussion we're getting into. Everything does seem to be in its infancy if you have a Superman, not quite at the origin, but still in his infancy of Superman career. And then, interestingly, Jeff asks, another fan says, could Ben Affleck direct? Now, James Gunn replied saying, met with Ben Affleck yesterday, precisely because he wants to direct, and we want him to direct. We just have to find the right project. So, again, one has to assume this is entirely on the topic of the DC Universe's 8 to 10 year plan. He is saying they met with Ben yesterday precisely because he wants to direct, I assume, a movie in the DC Universe. Again, because that's what he's talking about here in this thread. And he says, and we want him to direct one. But they just need to find the right project for Ben Affleck to direct, which is another interesting factor. And if it wasn't clear enough already, especially after the whole Batman Reeves verse, and I'm so, you know, this is one thing I am very thankful to James Gunn for being transparent about, has been shot down. Like, I know I'm not trying to blow smoke up my ass or anything. It's just, I've been saying this the whole time, that that's been my gut instinct, and I've tried to support it with some circumstantial evidence. I've done a whole video on this, and it's just good to know that that's kind of been made clear. Matt Reeves even spoke about it again. Getting a bit too far ahead of myself, we're going to get into that in the back half of this video. So Pattinson's Batman won't be the DCU Batman, but I really don't think Ben Affleck is going to be signing on to a multi-picture contract-y kind of thing again, especially when you take into account that Superman in the DC Universe is going to be in his earlier years. Which does lead, you know, to the whole, okay, so what is going on with the Batman DCU character, of which we will entertain not only in this video, but I'm sure in subsequent videos in the future. So what are my thoughts on this? I'm sure a lot of you are like, okay, news out the way, but what do you think, Boba, about this? So I think it goes without saying, evidently, for so many of us, that I feel so bad for Henry Cavill. He came back after all of this time. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson made it happen. He came back in Black Adam. And then he announced his return as the character. You know, we knew that there was a film, a sequel to Man of Steel in early development. There was 2 pitches from 2 different writers, a producer from Man of Steel, sometime after Black Adam was released, so, you know, they wouldn't be spoiled. And he announced that through Instagram, you know, proudly saying, I am back. It's true, guys, I'm back as Superman. And he's gone on to talk in interviews. You know, there's that one that most people have seen where he talks about, you know, the kind of character traits he would like to explore, the optimistic Superman, the really bringing about hope version. And that was kind of all true, because at that time, even though he had been told otherwise, and James Gunn, this is where it overlaps a little bit, and Peter Safran then got hired, which is, you know, where all of this goes a bit like that, it was kind of happening. I think one thing can be said for sure, though. Whoever made that premature decision to tell Henry Cavill to announce officially that he's back as Superman before the new leadership of James Gunn and Peter Safran came in, definitely screwed up. I don't know if this was Michael D. Luca and Pam Abdi, but yeah, that really shouldn't have been done before the new leadership with their own vision and potential changes, which is kind of fairly obvious that they would have made some, came into office, so to speak. But then he also left Netflix's The Witcher. Granted, I do think it's really important to note that there were some pretty big creative differences that really likely motivated Henry Cavill's decision to leave that role. But obviously, knowing that he had a future Superman movie coming out that was under his belt probably made that decision easier and kind of sealed the deal for leaving The Witcher and made that the right decision. And now, no Superman, no Netflix's The Witcher, and, you know, maybe he would have stayed on and bit his tongue a little bit while still enjoying playing the Witcher role if he already knew back then that he wouldn't be carrying on as Superman, if you know what I mean. And so I think there's a couple of camps that people land in. So there's those who are just outright infuriated about this, do not understand it, will not understand it, and don't care to understand the creative decision that James Gunn, as the new co-head chair of DC Studios, has made. And I understand that, because they feel that no matter what with this new DC cinematic universe, it could have carried on with soft reboot changes here and there, big changes here and there, but with some legacy DCEU characters, which, ironically enough, I still think is a possibility, and we are going to dive into that. And of course, there are those who are still sad, maybe also in combination with a bit of, you know, feeling mad, but perhaps still understand the decision that Gunn and Safran have made, with many talking about how, yes, this sucks, but they believe perhaps it's the best thing for DC to just reboot it and cultivate a new frickin' start from here on out. And I wanted to lay those two different kind of opinions out because I've been keeping my eyes glued to social media. I could barely sleep last night because I wanted to talk about this, but also just it's such a thing to absorb. So I was just on Twitter constantly looking at what people had to say, whether it's mutuals or just on the hashtags. So I do believe that is the general consensus right now surrounding this. Now, what's my opinion, like my consensus of this whole situation? Which camp of which I just laid out two different paths, roughly, of do I land in? To be honest, I've kind of got mixed feelings about it. I think you guys know me well enough to think that I think this sucks. I was happy that Henry Cavill came back. I was optimistic, still some hope there, because I was talking about the whole, yes, we're getting a new DC cinematic universe with this 8 to 10 year plan. I expect big changes, but soft reboot doesn't always mean subtle changes. You can have major changes, but also some more subtle ones. And I was hoping that Cavill would still be a part of that. But evidently, he is not now. Now, at the same time, I do understand the camp of where people fall in, and I am, you know, very much so a part of the camp that feels sad, quite frustrated about it, because you could have still cultivated Henry Cavill's take on Superman, even if you wanted to kind of soft reboot the character in a Daredevil Born Again kind of way from Netflix to the MCU and made him a little bit different, even in the ways that Henry Cavill went to speak about after Black Adam. They could have carried on like that. That being said, I do still understand, and this is the whole thing, we don't truly know. Again, I keep repeating this, we're going to get into this topic in a little bit, if it's a full reset or not. But regardless, why Warner Brothers and DC might be interested in doing a full, like, complete whoosh with things, such as now, as seen with Henry Cavill's Superman getting a completely new canonical change and continuity alteration, because he's quite simply not the same character. Henry Cavill, we saw in Man of Steel, BVS, all of this, Justice League, this new Superman, none of that. Like, it's a new Superman. So no matter how I feel, there is a part of me in there where it's just like, okay, I can still appreciate and understand why this might be their interest if they're wiping the slate clean with more or less so many things, because at the end of the day, they are forging a new DC universe, as Henry Cavill said himself, as James Gunn said himself over the past week. Right, so the number of questions, because I'm sure many of you have complete conviction that this is a complete and utter reboot. Boba, they've got rid of Henry Cavill's Superman. He's going to be a Superman in his younger years. So obvious they're getting rid of everyone, right? Now, I'm not saying I don't believe that, and I'm not saying I believe what I'm about to say, but I still think that things are very much so up in the air. Now, I tweeted this out on Twitter, and I just want to read it out directly because it kind of conveys my thoughts that I want to kind of pose to you. I genuinely have big questions about Peacemaker now. If you're going to have a younger Superman in his early days in the new DCU, then this sounds like a hard DCU reboot. So would they keep a DCEU character like Peacemaker if they're changing continuity with a character as big as Superman? Now, if they do though, keep Peacemaker that is, then it would be an interesting soft reboot with some major revisions, for example, the major Superman change, while keeping some character castings on from the DCEU. Or yeah, the alternative being a total hard reboot all round, so no Peacemaker. Now, the reason why I mention Peacemaker is because even though it may seem so obvious that this is a hard reboot or reset with James Gunn's DCU, given that we're now having that younger Superman and potentially Jason Momoa's Lobo, then you have to think about what's going on with Black Adam, given that we'll have a whole arse new younger Superman continuity now, and clearly the end of the Black Adam movie set up Henry Cavill's Superman, so will Black Adam, especially given his performance, carry on? But going back to the whole Peacemaker side of it with John Cena, the reason why you might be why are you talking about Peacemaker? I didn't even watch it or something. There's just something nagging in my brain in that we know we're supposed to be getting a season 2. Now some of you might be like, but Boba, James has just got to drop that given his new role and everything. But even though we know he's writing and directing projects as well as being the head of DC Studios, I still think because it's a project that James Gunn created, that I just wouldn't be surprised if he's somehow still brought over into the new continuity of the DC universe, even despite Henry Cavill's Superman being completely reworked and redone with a whole new continuity. Obviously though, if that happened, I think some fans would be pissed that they change a character as huge as Henry Cavill's Superman with a completely new direction, casting and continuity and all of that, for them to still salvage some characters like John Cena's Peacemaker and just why not reboot everything? But when we ponder all of this, one thing comes to mind. Truly, and that's what James Gunn said after the initial Hollywood Reporter story broke a few days ago. And he said eventually in that thread, but in the end, the drawbacks of that transitional period were dwarfed by the creative possibilities and most importantly, and the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and help rectify what has not. So you could draw out of that he does want to build upon what has worked in DC so far and help rectify what is not by maybe changing some things. So you could look at that like, oh, maybe he feels like Superman hasn't worked so far as much, despite how popular the casting is and characters amongst the fans, that even though this might not make sense to so many people, he might still feel like the best creative decision is to kind of reboot and cleanse that character with the new younger Superman that we're getting written by James Gunn, but also still not rule out how they can build upon what has worked. So maybe there is, this is all I'm entertaining, maybe there is still some DCEU characters coming over, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Daredevil Born Again treatment from Charlie Cox going from Netflix's tone and demeanor to the MCU's version, which would entail a more softer reboot without a fully hard reboot reset, which again, soft reboots don't always mean little to no changes. You can have major changes in soft reboots, but also some subtle changes. Obviously, the difference between that soft reboot and a hard reboot just completely swipes everything, like from Nolan's Batman trilogy to then Man of Steel starting off the Snyderverse. So let me know what you think of that. Let me know if you think, nope, I'm not going to entertain it at all. It's still clearly a complete and total wipe. It's evident with Henry Cavill's Superman being erased and the fact that they're bringing in a new younger Superman. So clearly that spells out a complete reset and continuity going forward in the DC universe. Or do you also think, yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow James Gunn still brings in Harcourt and Peacemaker, even with continuity change in the DC universe going forward under Peter Safran and James Gunn's watch, with that new Superman, with all these new characters and canon coming our way. They're still going to work that in there and build upon what has worked before, but help rectify what has not. I still think we don't know that for an absolute certainty. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm really not actually holding any stock in that. I just think that we shouldn't rule that out right now, despite how many people feel this conviction that it is undoubtedly a full hard reboot for the DC universe. And just to make myself like seriously mega crystal clear, I wouldn't be remotely surprised if this is a full hard reboot. I don't know, man. There's just something nagging at me that somehow James Gunn will still want to make a Peacemaker Season 2 and just still have that casting in that new DC universe. Even if that did happen, I still wouldn't be surprised if Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is gone. Full reboot there. Full reboot with Superman, as we already know. Just there might be an echo. But it does, as I said, I feel like it will leave a bitter taste in some people's mouths, even if they are fans of Peacemaker, because it's like, well, if you're already getting rid of this, that, and the other, you may as well do a full clean reboot and obviously leave the Batman in its own universe. The same with Todd Phillips' Joker, and somehow Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Superman movie. And that's exactly what we're moving into now. So let's talk about the Batman universe being separate. Now, again, I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I do feel compelled to say that I have always felt like it will be this way. I've kind of held up the banner of me saying I don't think it's ever going to join the DC universe, but I've always maintained the stance of, don't get me wrong though, like, I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, because I can't tell you for a fact. I'm not in the meeting room when James Gunn, as he said himself, his first call was to Matt Reeves when he came in as head of DC Studios with Peter Safran. I've always been like, okay, even if it does, I'm not going to enjoy Matt Reeves' take on Batman and Robert Pattinson in the DC universe. It's just, I felt like it just wasn't going to happen. And I have a whole video going over this, collecting the evidence, expanding on just the thoughts of how those worlds don't really merge, even though there's so many people who believe that you could have still built a foundation off of Reeves' Batman's Gotham, and then introduced the characters from like the base of the tree being Reeves' Batman and Gotham and world, and then introduced the metahumans, the aliens, the other DC characters from there on out. I get what you're saying, but I just never, it doesn't, the key doesn't fit the lock still. And check that video out if you want my expanded thoughts going over what Matt Reeves has said before. Again, even with all of this stuff, this is the interesting thing, because let's start off with this. Initially yesterday, I'm glad I held off on making the video because I felt like there would be a fallout response to this. So Variety put out this article with the following quote. And this is where quite a few people were dunking on me, being like, Boba, we tried to tell you, we tried to tell you. A well-placed source says Gunn and Safran are exploring the possibility of incorporating filmmaker Matt Reeves' iteration of the Batman with actor Robert Pattinson into their wider universe, so the DC universe. And I was like, okay, so maybe this is the time where, despite me being like, okay, I can't guarantee it, but I don't think it will happen, maybe it's that time I'm holding my hands up and be like, right, okay, have to adjust, right? Have to adjust to this. But I still tweeted out saying, this is still the kind of thing where I'll need to see it to believe it. I still didn't believe, even though a major trade was saying, our sources are saying they're exploring these possibilities to incorporate him. But then, since the internet was erupting and pestering James Gunn about this, Matt Reeves, he quote tweeted the article and said, there are a few reporters I love more than Adam B. Very, truly a good guy. But in this case, he needs to get a new source, as this is entirely untrue. And then Matt Reeves took to Twitter to quote James Gunn's tweet of what he just said there, saying the source I'm really liking on this is Mr. James Gunn. And there we have it. The Batman continuity, the universe, the world, the Gotham, Robert Pattinson is staying in his own goddamn world. He's not joining the DC universe. At least that's what they're saying now. I mean, like, God forbid that for some reason in 2 years' time, they're like, oh no, but now after the second, or as we're approaching the third movie in 5 years or 6 years, they're like, okay, we might be doing it. But let it be known, it was tweeted right now that they're saying, no, they're not exploring possibilities of bringing him over, and it does fall in line with everything Matt Reeves has said. Yes, even with those interview clips of Matt Reeves in the press tour circling, I tried making this clear in my videos, but I understand how everyone has different opinions and takes. I completely respect that, and you can draw different takes with the context of what Reeves was saying, but there was those clips going around of Reeves talking and entertaining a question of the interviewer. As you would expect, if you're an interviewer and there's a new Batman movie coming out, you might wonder about the bigger world. So you might be like, could there be a Superman out there? Could you incorporate other characters like that out in the world? And with Matt Reeves' response, he went on to say and entertain the question, but ultimately say it's not his interest, but hey, that would be fun and cool to explore. But my take from that, no matter how much he went into, okay, maybe, if Gotham saw that, everyone would be shocked and things like that. But for me, and he kept coming back to this, for me, I wanted to do this. That's not my interest. For me, he was just entertaining the interviewers. If I was Matt Reeves and I was asked about that, I'd be like, sure. You know what, let's entertain your question there. And as a result, some fans were really clinging on to that as to why he will be, and why it could have been a possibility of Reeves's and Pattinson's Batman being merged into James Gunn's DC cinematic universe that we're now getting a slate for the next 8 to 10 years of in the new year. I feel pretty comfortable that not only James Gunn said this is entirely untrue, Matt Reeves then hammered down. Matt Reeves himself was just like, yeah, the source I am love to believe on this is James Gunn, because again, this has never been his interest. He entertains the questions of connectivity. He entertains that, I suppose, one day or somehow it could be out there. Yes, in the prequel novel, they mention Metropolis or LexCorp. What Matt Reeves has mainly been echoing is that it's just not his interest. He wants to tell a personal story, a grounded story, and I'm telling you, even if you have that foundation of Gotham with some of the pictures out there, as the seed to the tree, and then the trunk starts to grow, and then the roots. So the roots being these other movies like Lobo, the early Superman. And as much as you can see, and I can see it as well, by the way, Pattinson's Batman, he looks great as Batman, standing right next to a young, chiseled Superman. I can see that, but still, within the confines of the universe that was forged, two different things. I can't imagine as that trunk grows out into these tree roots and branches, rather, Lobo running around, other metahuman aliens out there. That is way too fantastical for Matt Reeves. I'm telling you now. I'm not saying that he won't walk the line of fantastical with maybe even future Rogues Gallery villains in number 2 or 3. And what I mean by walk the line is not going as hard as the fantastical Clayface blob monster in number 3 or number 2, or needing sub-zero temperature for Mr. Freeze, but maybe tinkering on the edge of somehow making that a reality like he did with advancing apes with a drug in the Planet of the Apes movies, with that drug not existing in our reality today, but it still was happening in a grounded universe. Now, this reminds me to talk about how David Zaslav said and wants to go ham on the DC Trinity. So Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. But I don't think it was actually, and now there's a bit of clarity to it, at least in this speculation I'm offering to you in this video, was in the way that people would have typically perceived with his comment of saying, basically he was going on about, we are going to use them as cash cows. Understandably, they are huge characters. So a lot of people thought, okay, that's going to be a connected Trinity. But what it probably is they are focusing on these characters regardless of what universe they lie in. So in Superman's case, it's going to be in the connected and cohesive universe of the DC universe, right? Milk that cash cow. Same with Wonder Woman, I assume, but Batman as well. And their cash cow for the Batman is Matt Reeves, and in that universe. So the Trinity is still being capitalized upon, albeit that it's not in the typical, in-story universe pairing, or not pairing, but Trinity storyline kind of way. I don't know if I'm making any sense there, but again, I think people initially thought when David Zaslav said that we'd be getting like the Trinity, meeting each other, talking at some point in the next several years, right? But I think he was more just talking about how do we make profit off of these characters, no matter what way we execute that. So obviously, mainly they're focusing on a DC cinematic universe, one with cohesion, one with slates and phases, similar to that to rival the MCU, right? Now, we have no idea what's going on with Batman in the DC universe, more on that in a second, but you can still capitalize on the Trinity and the Batman aspect of that 3-part puzzle, or like success and cash cow scheme, will just be in Matt Reeves' universe, and that makes money. It still made 780, 46, 48, 68 million. I can't remember, but it didn't flop. Do you know what I mean? So they're carrying on ham with that. Superman's being carried on ham in James Gunn's DC universe. Wonder Woman, I assume, is similar. But back to the DCU Batman, of course, I could kind of still be slightly off there, but while still maintaining my original speculation that the cash cow is still Matt Reeves' Batman, and Superman and Wonder Woman cash cows are in the main coherent DC universe, but also with another Batman. And I think that would be happening regardless. I just wonder, with such ambiguity surrounding the DC Universe Batman? Will he be brought in a little bit later on, or like several years into the future, or will he be built up in a more subtle way to mainly kind of come more into effect as the Batman trilogy comes to an end? Don't forget, David Zaslav said, and this was another piece of evidence that was driving so many people to think that Pattinson would be the DC Universe's Batman, that there won't be 4 Batmans running around, or however he worded it. That doesn't equate to, okay, there's not going to be 4, there's going to now just be 1. No. As we know now, Robert Pattinson's Batman, Reeves' Batman, staying in its own little universe, not going into the DC Universe. So as a result, this new coherent DC Universe is still gotta surely have a Bruce Wayne. So not having 4, as David Zaslav said, and at that point, that's true, there were quite a few castings. We had Pattinson's, Keaton's, a potential new casting on the table, and potentially Ben Affleck's. Now, there's gonna be Pattinson's and Reeves' Batman universe over there. But the DC Universe, as I said, still needs a Bruce in some capacity. That being said, I think just like a lot of us, I can't imagine the DC Universe, like the mainline DCU canon under James Gunn and Peter Safran and what they're forging with this new story and main rival to the MCU, that there will be a solo Batman movie early on with the Batman trilogy still going on. So I feel like, yes, there will still be a new Batman, but maybe he's going to be brought in like appearances. I know people are gonna hate the idea of this, and they're saying there should just be one universe, or one Batman in this new DC universe with solo Batman movies. He should still get that. But yeah, there's just something instinctual to me feeling like with Reeves' trilogy going on, and 2 more solo Batman movies at least to come out with spin-off shows, that the main DCU will have a Batman, or at least a Bruce Wayne, or whatever the heck's going on there, since they're having a younger Superman, so maybe they're having a younger Batman as well. But he won't have solo movies, at least not initially in the first couple of years or so. That might wait until they get to a point of the Reeves trilogy ending. I really don't know, because it just seems kind of odd to have the DCU Batman have a solo movie, and then the Elseworlds Reeves universe have a Batman movie. It's totally possible, so they will probably have that Bruce Wayne in the mainline DC universe, but kind of, I don't know, Nick Fury. I know that sounds so lame to kind of articulate it like that, like, just in the role of just popping up every now and again to then ultimately appear in team-ups and then maybe have a solo movie one day. This is what I mean by the ambiguity. We really don't know what's going on with that. Another thing that's just weird is that, even though I was right in thinking, okay, the Batman, Reeves won't want his world going into the mainline DCU, that's remaining separate, but it still seems that there's other worlds out there. We know we've got Joker, but that's probably ending with Joker 2, but Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Black Superman film is still in development, which is perplexing. I thought that wouldn't pan out. I still don't necessarily think it will pan out, but they're still maintaining strong that there's going to be another world, another kind of Elseworlds movie with a Black Superman take. And again, it's not that I wouldn't be interested in seeing that. It's more that I understood that they're giving Matt Reeves his Batman, but I thought that would be like literally the only leniency they would give. It's not so much about Joker 2 leniency, because that's just going to end soon anyway, right? And the first one made $1 billion. But I didn't think they would extend the leniency into still carrying on with other Elseworlds movies, because I doubt that this Black Superman movie will be in the DCU, at least from what we understood it originally. But that being said, maybe I'm wrong. Just dawning upon me now, maybe they're going to make it a Val Zod story within the DC universe. But then again, having 2 Superman type characters in the DCU when they're already doing an early years Superman, I feel like that would they would steal thunder from each other. So I don't know what the heck's going on. Are they having another world, so they're not opposed to having more Elseworld type universes like the Batman, like Joker, like now Ta-Nehisi's Black Superman movie? I don't know. This is what I mean. Still so much ambiguity there. So I think I'm going to end the video now, guys. I have been rambling for so long, but I still felt like there was so much to say. So I guess treat this more like a podcast-esque kind of ramble video. Let me know all of your thoughts, of course. Nobody has to agree on everything. I'm sure we all have different takes. Some are like really sour about it. I understand it. Some are like really sad about it like me, but can still, understand maybe why Warner Brothers Discovery and the new heads feel like there's a need for potentially a full hard reboot. But that being said, do you think there is? And entertain the discussion that we went over earlier with, do you think it's going to be more of a soft reboot to hard reboot, but maintaining some slithers of characters possibly? Let me know your thoughts on that. Let me know your thoughts on now, more or less, the confirmation that the Batman is staying in its own universe. There's probably going to be more updates on this, so do stay subscribed because we'll be on top of it, and I promise not every video will be this long. Like it, guys. Would really appreciate that. Check out the links in the description to my social media. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DC universe in the next video. Goodbye.